You are a law-abiding citizen. You have never committed a crime. All your life you have followed the rules. Until now. You are in court and the judge finds you guilty of a crime you did not commit. You tell them you didn't do it, but they have evidence against you. You feel helpless, and when you least expect it, you are doing 30 years in prison, or even worse, you are sentenced to death. Sounds like a bad dream. Does it happen to many Americans? It is called wrongful convictions. DNA testing should be mandatory before anyone is sentenced to long-term prison or even death. How many more people have to suffer until we get the rights we deserve? Hello, my name is Jonathan Aldana, and I am for using DNA testing before a long prison term or convicted to death. We must make these tests a requirement for every state because we cannot afford to risk any more lives. In the US, as of September 2011, 273 people, including 17 death row inmates, have been convicted by using DNA tests. The increasing use of DNA tests to help confirm the innocence or guilt in capital cases is one among many reforms that we will help ensure that innocent people are not sentenced to death. DNA also has another important property, its uniqueness. While human and animal DNA are remarkably alike, modern science can reliably and with great accuracy distinguish between the DNAs of individuals. Except in the case of identical twins and bone marrow transplant recipients, DNA is a reliable identifier. DNA testing on biological samples such as skin, saliva, semen, blood, or hair can help convict with great accuracy, but only if biological evidence is properly collected, preserved, and kept from contamination. And not only if the analysis is done correctly under those conditions, DNA testing is a modern and improved version of fingerprinting. In May of 1987, Bruce Gottschalk was convicted of rape and burglary in Pennsylvania. The conviction was based primarily on eyewitness identification and confessions later proven to be false. Forensic techniques available at the time of the trial and used to test the semen for the crimes could not be excluded Mr. Gottschalk as a perpetrator. Following his conviction, Mr. Gottschalk petitioned for access to DNA testing and was denied. After contacting the Innocence Project in 1995, which sought testing on his behalf, the district attorney refused to allow access to the DNA evidence. It was not until November of 2000 that the federal district court granted access to the DNA testing. Delays in setting a testing protocol and delivering the evidence, in addition to some legal hurdles, deferring testing as evidence until January of 2002. Mr. Gottschalk was eventually included as a donor of semen in the crimes and released from prison. Mr. Gottschalk has spent 7 of his 15 years incarceration fighting for access to DNA evidence. As a result of Mr. Gottschalk's case, Pennsylvania introduced and later passed a law creating access to DNA evidence. Sometimes cases are reopened so that the evidence may be re-examined using the latest scientific resources long after a defendant has been sentenced to prison. In these cases, a defendant may be incarcerated before DNA testing was available or found guilty without the inclusion of DNA testing in the investigation of the case. Because of the costs associated with DNA testing, most prisoners cannot pay the expense of carrying out such tests. Costs that may include long-term storage of biological evidence so that the evidence will not deteriorate over time. On the other hand, most states have passed laws allowing prisoners to request post-conviction DNA testing to show in the investigation or prove that they did not commit a crime. However, some states such as Idaho, Michigan, and Nebraska require the petitioner or prisoner to pay for these tests. In the meantime, however, mandatory DNA tests have another, more subtle cost they deserve. In the meantime, individuals accused of some wrongdoing have strong protections under federal and state constitutions, the right to not be forced to testify in their own trials, and the right to call witness, and the right to jury trial of their peers. In cases where it is relevant, defense attorneys have the right to examine evidence, including the right to request DNA testing or to independently confirm the results if necessary. In short, most individuals accused of a crime or incarcerated after being found guilty of a crime already have access to DNA testing and can take advantage of it. The case of innocent prisoners as a result of DNA tests carried out long after the crimes were committed primarily reflect the fact that DNA testing was still new when these cases were brought to trial.